Thank you so much, Dr. Ashok, for introducing me. And firstly, I would like to thank Dr. Ashok for giving me this opportunity to present a bit of my work, my research work before all the participants. So a very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this Atal FDP. As you're already aware, because this FDP is on broad areas of sensors. So, you know, the sensors, they have applications in various areas. So when Dr. Ashok requested me to give a lecture, I was just wondering, because our department is instrumentation and control, there's a wide variety of area wherein we are working on the application of sensors. So in today's session, I'm going to cover two topics. So since the time is short, I don't know how much justice I will be able to do, because it's a very vast area, but I'll be mainly concentrating on two areas. First is the application of sensors in the detection of food quality. That is one of my research work, a part of which was done in US, as Dr. Ashok has just introduced to you. And after that, I will be telling you what is the application of the sensors in the area of robotics, wherein mainly we will be seeing that how the biosensors, mainly, wherein the sensors which can be applied to the human body and how they can be used to control the robotics. So that part I will be covering. So without taking much of the time, let me just begin my session. So I hope you are able to see my screen. Sir, is my screen visible? You're not able to see my screen?
No, ma'am, you are not shared.
Now? Are you able to see my screen now? I'm sharing it actually.
No, ma'am.
It's not showing you presenting.
Okay.
Click on present now.
Yeah, I already clicked that.
Then you have to click in bit.
Okay, I didn't click on the share on entire screen.
Yes.
That was the reason. So can you see now?
Yes.
So as the first topic for today's session is on application of the sensors for food quality. So there is a wide area wherein I worked on the application of the sensors in the field of agriculture. So in this session, I'm going to mainly present my work wherein I made use of the sensors for the moisture content measurement of peanuts and dried fruits using their electrical properties.
Dr. Thakur, sorry for interruption. Can you please hide this?
Yeah.
Stop sharing and hide two are options there.
That must be
If you
coming
click
on.
hide, then it, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So firstly, let us see that what are pillars of food security. Why do we need to go into this area? Why do we need to study the application of food sensors for the moisture content determination? Then according to WHO, that is World Health Organization, there are three pillars of food security. One is the food availability, food access, and food use. But as you can see from this, that there is a constant annual growth in the demand for the food, as you can see from here. But at the same time, we are all well aware of this fact that each year in India, about 20 million tons of grain is lost to spoilage. And this equals about half the grain produced in Australia every year. So these are some of the newspaper clippings which are supporting what I just told you, that how much food is wasted. Farmers, we know how much hard work they put into it, but still what a large amount of food it goes wasted every year. And there are many other reasons why we need to go towards this food security and nutrition. There are a lot of, because of the malnutrition, a lot of deaths are occurring. Then about 44 million people are pushed into poverty because of malnutrition. 75% of the world's poor are rural and most are farmers. About up to 2 to 3% of the GDP is lost to undernutrition. And 2 billion people suffer from deficiencies in micronutrients like iron, zinc, vitamin A, etc. So these are some of the facts which make us ponder why we need to look into this very important area of food security. And then we will see how the sensors, they can play an important role. So as I was telling you that the demand for the food is increasing. At the same time, food grain is being wasted, while the food grain production, as you can see from here, it is also decreasing. We have been talking of green revolution and all those things, but this is also a hard fact that the food grain production is decreasing with the time. And government has additional task of providing, when the food subsidy bill came, so then you have to provide food to the common people at a very subsidized rate because of the introduction of the food subsidy bill. So next pillar is the food safety, and the World Health Day, which is celebrated every year on WHO's birthday. You know, it's on 7th of April. So it is on 7th of April. It is always celebrated as the food safety is the theme of the World Health Day, and the main attributes are the contaminants, the toxins, residues. So these are also some of the areas wherein I have worked on, wherein we have made use of sensors to determine the contaminants, toxins, and residues. But I'll not be covering these today because of the limited time. But yeah, these are some more applications wherein the sensors can play a very vital, important role. So in such a scenario, what are the challenges before us? One is to prevent the food prices from creating poverty and malnutrition, as we have just seen. At the same time, it is important to meet the rising global demand. And the pertinent question which the government is facing right now is how to feed 9.3 billion people by the year 2050. So solution, there can be two solutions. One is to either increase the productivity or to decrease the food losses, because as they say, a penny saved is a penny earned. So we will today be concentrating on this area, that is to decrease the food losses. Now, when we're talking of decreasing the food losses, let us see that what are, as we saw that such high amount of grain is wasted, then let us just think that what are the causes of the food loss. So one of the biggest cause of the food loss is the high moisture value in the food. So as we can see from this diagram also, that there, as the temperature and moisture increases, like in this green zone, when it is between 10 to 12% and the temperature is up to 20 degrees, then there is the best long-term storage. But as the moisture content keeps on increasing, there is reduced mold and pest risk. Then you have deteriorated germination, toxins, etc., and so on. So it's very important to monitor this value in the food grains. It's very well known to all of us that what is moisture content. It is defined as the amount of moisture which the seed contains, and it is affected by various factors such as bulk density of the grain, shape and size of the grain, temperature of environment in grain, dielectric properties of the grain. And we know that it is very important to determine the moisture content of the grains at every step, right from harvesting, then storage, processing, and even when you are processing, after processing, when you're marketing. So at every step, you need to monitor the moisture content of the grains. So there are various methods, as we can see from here, which are used for determination of moisture content. They are mainly classified into direct and indirect, because once we finalize which is the method which we are going to use, then we can determine what are the sensors which we'll be using. So as you can see from here, there are direct methods are thermogravimetric method and chemical methods, and indirect methods are electrical methods and spectroscopic methods. So we will be mainly concentrating on these electrical methods, wherein we make use of the electrical properties of the grain in order to determine the moisture content. And this was the novel method wherein we use the complex impedance. So complex impedance measurement was not used for the determination of moisture content in the grains. So we developed this method. So it's widely used that the electrical properties, it's nothing new that electrical properties are used for moisture content determination. These are, in fact, 100 years ago that the researchers, they started working on electrical properties, because there's a strong correlation between the moisture content and their dielectric properties. So a lot of research has already been done, wherein the researchers found that there is a strong correlation between the dielectric properties and the moisture content. So in case you are able to determine these dielectric properties, so you will be able to find the moisture content, because this is an indirect method of moisture content determination. So after that, numerous dielectric grain moisture meters have been developed that can rapidly measure the moisture content of bulk grain samples. And presently, most of the moisture meters which are present in the market, they measure the capacitance of the static samples. So capacitance is the electrical property which is mainly used at present in the market. And these are some of the instruments which are based on change of conductance, change in capacitance. However, these current moisture meters which have capacitive sensors which are mainly used, so these are sufficient for most static samples. However, they are not suitable for using continuous or online applications. Why? Because as I told you when we were seeing the definition of moisture content, that moisture content determines, it is also dependent on the bulk density. So whenever the grain is being poured, wherein you have a bulk quantity of the sample, then there is a lot of bulk density fluctuations which are happening. So these bulk density fluctuations, they cause a change in the value of the dielectric properties, and thus the values which are actually coming in the reading of those moisture meters, they are not correct. So apart from dielectric properties, there are other, apart from bulk density, there are other factors also. For example, frequency, temperature, etc., which are also to be taken into account whenever you are making use of the dielectric properties. So using a single frequency to measure the capacitance, I think all of you are engineers, you can understand, you know the value of capacitance, how it is dependent upon epsilon naught A upon D. And what is happening is that till now, the capacitance, it was being measured at a single frequency. However, what is happening is that whenever you have a large sample, you have a bulk sample, then what happens is that you may be having high pockets of high moisture samples, and you may be having low pockets of moisture samples. So when it is a big lot of your grain, then your high moisture samples may get blended with the small, and thus it can lead to the spoilage of the entire lot. So what is happening right now, like once I visited the mandi and I just observed that how are they measuring it right now. So what do they do is that they have a bulk sample of the grains, and they just take any one area, they just put the capacitive sensor there, they measure the measure the moisture, and then say, okay, this is fine or this is not fine. But what may happen is that whenever there is a bulk sample, bulk grain sample, it may happen that at some other pocket there is a high moisture sample area sample also which is present. So they might say that, okay, this is fine, but when that high moisture sample gets blended with the low, so it may lead to the spoilage of the entire lot. So what is the solution? Solution is to sense the moisture content in the flowing grain from the dielectric property measurements. So all of the variables, for example, frequency, temperature, bulk density, they must also be measured, controlled, or accounted for in order to get an accurate moisture content. So thus, a moisture meter with a single capacitance measurement is unable to accurately sense the moisture content in flowing grains. So such kind of instrument that would measure moisture content of the small samples, because all the meters which are available at present are only for the bulk samples. So if we are able to develop an instrument which can be which is able to measure moisture content of small samples, that would also be very useful and beneficial for the industry. So we came across this impedance spectroscopy for the determination of moisture content in the grains. The impedance spectroscopy takes into account all these factors. It takes into account the frequency, it takes into account the bulk density, it takes into account the temperature also. So that is why it has got all the benefits which were the demerits of a capacitance based moisture meter. So in my work now, like impedance spectroscopy also till date, nobody was able to develop this impedance spectroscopy based moisture content determination. So we thought that what kind of sensors we should use in order to determine the impedance of a sample, so that it can indirectly give us the moisture content. So we developed a new method for moisture content measurement of Indian wheat using impedance spectroscopy by using auto balancing bridge and magnitude ratio and phase different detection methods. So we called it MC determination using ABB. This is a short form of auto balancing bridge, and MR PDD based impedance spectroscopy. I'm going to explain to you what are these terms basically and what all electronic circuitry we used for the determination of the impedance. As you can see from this table that there are various techniques which have been given to determine the impedance of any sample, whether it is grain or anything. I mean, in order to determine the impedance, there are various impedance measuring techniques. So every technique has got its own merit and demerit. So we mainly concentrated on the auto balancing bridge method. Now, why we went over to the auto balancing bridge method was there's another story to this, because there's not much of the time, but still I'll give you a brief idea about why we went into auto balancing bridge method. Because all the study which has been done till date determined the frequency, the dielectric properties between the frequency 1 megahertz to 5 megahertz. Okay, so they didn't go towards higher frequency because of the limitation of the instruments maybe, or they were not able to correlate the relationship of the dielectric properties beyond this this frequency. So this auto balancing bridge method, it has got a wide frequency from the low frequency to the high frequency. Similarly, they didn't go from less than 1 megahertz. So we thought that let me explore, because that is research. So let me explore that whether there is a strong correlation between the values which are less than 1 megahertz also. So I was just having a discussion with one of the scientists in US. He had worked a lot. Dr. Stuart Nelson is his name. In fact, he's a pioneer in the electrical properties measurement and the correlation with the moisture content. So I was just communicating him through the email, and I had just asked him that, sir, why didn't you go beyond 5 megahertz? Because all the papers which I have studied, you have mainly concentrated on 1 megahertz to 5 megahertz. So he told me that we haven't explored beyond 5 megahertz or lesser than 1 megahertz because we were having difficulty in correlating the capacitance in those frequencies. So I said, okay, that because I just shared my idea with him. Okay, I'm thinking of, instead of using the capacitance, I'm thinking of using the impedance. So we will be able to have more frequency ranges. So maybe we will be able to develop better techniques. So he said, yeah, that would be really good. You can explore that. But the thing is that whenever you go to higher frequency, more than 5 megahertz, there is a lot of dipolar variations, because we know that as the frequency keeps on increasing, so there are a lot of dipolar this thing which is happening, which can lead to the inaccuracies. So that is how we came to the idea of using the auto balancing bridge method, because it has got a wide frequency from the low frequency to the high frequency range. So we prepared samples, we carried out various carried out various measurements using impedance analyzer, and we had lot of frequency ranges right from 1 kilohertz to 150 megahertz, and then we found we noted all the measurements, and then on Excel sheet I just noted the correlation and found that ABB method was the best for 110 megahertz, and hence it was considered for the present work. So I found out that 110 megahertz was the best method. Another thing is that this MRPDD, which is magnitude ratio phase difference detection, it based impedance measurement is gaining popularity and has been widely used for bioimpedance measurement. So wherein you make use of the sensors for the for your body. So in that case, impedance measurement MRPDD method is quite popular. However, till date, no one had used this method for the moisture determination in the grains. So in this method, effort was made to design a novel method of the moisture measurement of Indian wheat. Firstly, Indian wheat was used using impedance spectroscopy based on this auto balancing bridge and MRPDD, which provides a compact, that's also very important, and cost-effective solution for real-time impedance measurement. And we also require to have a fast measurement, because you see, whenever you are making a new technique, whenever you are working on a new technique for anything, whether it is in this case quality analysis of grains or in any area, you need to have one reference method also, which is a proven method. So in our case, it was the dry oven method. Dry oven method takes several days, it takes quite large time, it's very laborious, etc. So but this method in which impedance spectroscopy was used, so we were planning to have a cost effective solutions. So we prepared the sample. There is a technique for the preparation of the samples, because you need to have the samples from 6 to 30%. So there is a technique for that. There's a formula for preparing, let's say 6%, then you need to know how much amount of grain you have to take, how much amount of distilled water you have to. So sample preparation itself takes a couple of days. It's not that easy as it seems to be here. So firstly, I prepared the samples with the moisture content ranging from 6 to 30%. So once the samples are prepared, then I use the dry oven method. So dry oven method, which is the conventional method, it was used. So I got the values. Okay, they were quite near to the ones which I was aiming for. Then I came to the auto balancing bridge method. Let me give you a quick idea about what exactly this auto balancing bridge method is. So as you can see from here, we apply one source to this. So this is a source wherein sinusoidal voltage is provided to it, and this is the DUT, which is the device under test. So this is where this is the thing whose impedance you have to measure. Okay, so this is known as device under test. So in this case, our DUT was the sample holder which was containing the grains whose impedance was to be measured. And then you have this op-amp. This is an op-amp, and this is one feedback resistor whose value is known to us, and there is one measured voltage. So this is known to us. This we measure, and this is known to us. So from here, by using these equations, we can find out the value of the impedance. So this is given by, actually I'll just come to the final equation. This is given by this feedback resistor whose value is known to us, source voltage and measured voltage. So now this is the essence of impedance measurement. Now what is ABB, what is MRPDD, how they are contributing towards the measurement of impedance? Let us see that. For that, you have to remember this formula. Impedance is equal to the feedback resistor multiplied by VS by VM. So what is this MRPDD method? In this MRPDD method, what happens is that there is one gain phase detector. Now, what does this gain phase detector do? So you supply the source voltage to this, you supply the measured voltage to this, and what this gives to you is K, which is a ratio of the magnitude of the source voltage and the measured voltage, and the difference in the phase angle. So that is why it is known as MRPDD. MR is nothing but magnitude ratio, so which is nothing but K, and PDD is phase difference detection method. So if we are able to get these two things, okay, so we can see that if we see this formula, the earlier one, this is RR multiplied by VS by VM. So because this is AC quantity, so we know that both this VS and VM, they are having magnitude as well as the phase angles. So what we do is that instead of calculating this divided by this, what we do is we directly calculate the ratio of VS by VM and the difference in the phase angles of this. So we are calling this theta, we are calling this K. So we get the measured impedance as RR multiplied by K multiplied by theta. So this is the essence of the impedance spectroscopy measurement. So this will give you more clear idea about how the work was actually implemented. So this is the source of the voltage source, that is a DDS, direct digital synthesizer, 89958. This is from Analog Devices. And then we have the sample holder, which is containing the grains basically. Then this is one gain phase detector, which is again using Analog Devices AD8302. And what we do is that this source is given directly to this gain phase detector, and when this is provided to this, the output voltage changes. So that is nothing but the VM. So we provide this VS and VM to the gain phase detector. So what this gain phase detector gives, it gives us two things. One is the K, the other is the theta. Okay, so through this DAC, because this is an analog form, but the PC doesn't take analog voltages. So firstly, you have to give it to DAC, which converts it into digital. So then to the PC, then you have your algorithm developed, wherein you have already the value of the moisture content, and you have the value of the impedance, which is calculated in the algorithm in the PC itself, and then you can correlate them. So directly you get a table between impedance and from the value of impedance, the relationship, and that is how you can find out the value of moisture content. So this is how it looks like, this AD9958. This is a this is op-amp, which we saw in the diagram there. This is the evaluation board of AD8302, and this was the use for that DAC, which I was telling you, DAC, data acquisition card. These are the results and discussions. So as I told you that we swept. So by the use of DDS, we were able to generate the frequency between 1 kilohertz to 1 megahertz, and it was applied to the sensor. Now here, what is the sensor? Sensor is nothing but your ABB, which is containing your moisture, containing your grains. So this sweep of frequency was applied to the sensor, and from the K and theta, which was measured by AD8302, the Z and C were computed at different frequencies. And it was found that the best correlation was found between moisture and impedance and capacitance at 251.158 kilohertz frequency. Because when you have a range of frequency, then you also have to find out that which is the best frequency which you want to find out. So we came to the conclusion that out of 1 kilohertz hertz to 1 megahertz, 251.158 kilohertz was the best. It was there wherein the best correlation was found between the moisture and the impedance and capacitance. So that was further taken for the further studies. And there was another study which was carried out by me earlier, wherein I made use of a precision LCR meter just to find out the relationships between impedance, capacitance, etc. with frequency. There also, with the help of precision LCR meter, I was able to find that the best correlation frequency was 251.158 kilohertz only. So this value, that means my sensor, the sensor which I developed using this technique, it is working fine. It is okay. That thing is also kind of validation has been done, because precision LCR meter is a standard meter. So through those studies also, I got to know that the best correlation between Z and impedance, capacitance, and the moisture is at 251.158. And here also, from the values I got from this technique, there also I got to know that the best correlation was at 251.158 kilohertz. Yeah. So as I told you in the beginning, that one frequency was not enough in order to find out the exact correlation. Why? The reason is that because whenever, grains, they are not one solid thing, right? So you are having small gaps in between. So whenever you pour a grain in a container or in a sensor, then there are some air gaps also which are there. And when the impedance or capacitance values of those air gaps, they get added to the overall impedance, and it may lead to the error in your measurement. So what happens is that when you take these electrical parameters at two different frequencies and you take a difference. So what happens is that, for example, in this case, I'm taking Z1 and Z2, similarly C1 and C2. Now, what is this Z1? This is the impedance at this frequency, 251.158, and Z2 is another randomly we took, okay, let us see that 1 megahertz. Let us take the other frequency at 1 megahertz. So what happens is that the impedance or capacitance of the air gap doesn't vary with frequency. So it is there at Z1 also, it is there at second frequency also. So when you take a difference of these two, the impedance of the air gap gets cancelled. So that is how I was able to negate the effect of the air gaps, which also leads to lot of variation in the, or we can say that lot of error in the final thing. So then we use the PLS regression technique, because once you have carried out the experimentation, you're finding out the correlation, then how do you find the correlation? For that, I use Unscrambler. It is a statistical tool, which is it's an excellent tool, statistical tool, Unscrambler. So therein I use this PLS partial least squares regression technique. It was used because ultimately you need to have an algorithm, because finally, what I'm telling you, this is only at the initial stage wherein there's a relation to find out the correlation between these electrical parameters and the and your moisture. But ultimately, when I had to design a microcontroller based technique, so therein right now, though I was just using the PC. In the PC itself, I had developed an algorithm and all those things. I was making the calculations. But when it has to be done online, I need to have an equation which I can directly burn into my microcontroller or any other technique which I was planning. So later on, I developed microcontroller based method on this. So I needed to use one prediction model. So for that, I used the PLS regression technique. So these were the results which were used by using Unscrambler. So there were some samples which were outliers, they were outrightly rejected. So as you can see that it's very this is another way of knowing that whatever measurements you have taken, they are also correct. So as you can see from here, I had high correlation, 99%, which is very good. And I have different pockets also. I mean, that shows that whatever samples you have prepared, so all those samples, they are lying, all these are the low samples, low measurement moisture content samples. This is the medium and this is the high. Just a second. Okay, so these are some more correlation loadings which I use. So from here we can see that now these are the results from Unscrambler, wherein we can see that moisture content is very directly, I mean C1 and C2, so they are very closely related to moisture, and there is an opposite correlation with impedance. So that means as the moisture increases, the capacitance increases and the impedance decreases. So this is showing that. And this is the validation plot between the predicted and the reference values. Now, what are these reference values? Reference values are nothing but the values which I got from the dry oven method, which is the reference technique, which is a standard technique. So as you can see from here, there is a strong correlation, 98%. So this is for both for calibration and validation. So some of the data was used for calibration, while some of the data was used for validation. So we are seeing that this R square is showing very good results for calibration, 97% and 97.9%, 97.3%. So these are the predicted values. Once I calculated that for this is the sample which I prepared, and so predicted value was 7.9. So there was a deviation of only 0.58%. So and so on. So when we see the dry event technique method, so this is the here also very less deviation was there. The results were quite close. So our results were validated. So this is how a novel design for moisture measurement of grains was used based on the impedance measurement using ABB and MRPDD method. And we have seen that the latest analog ICs 809958, 88302 were also used, and the cost and complexity of the system, it was reduced. And accuracy, we have already seen, it was quite good. Samples were prepared between 6 to 30% and highly accurate with the correlation of 97% was used. And then I further used this method. I developed a low cost measurement, a low cost moisture meter also using this method later on. Now, coming to the next, that is another like moisture determination of the peanuts and fruits. This is a part of my work which I carried out in RRR lab in Athens in USA. Now that is in Georgia state of USA, and there's a lot of production of the peanuts. People make use of the peanuts in everything. They use it for food, for peanut butter, peanut oil, everything. So there's a lot of research is going on there. In fact, you will be surprised to know that there is a complete dedicated research lab on peanuts itself. There's a place called Dawson, and therein they have a dedicated research lab on peanuts itself. So I carried a part of my work there. So this lab was National Peanuts Laboratory, Dawson. Therein I carried out the work of moisture determination in the peanuts, and RRR lab in Athens in Georgia, wherein I carried out the work on fruits. And then there were other quality like total oil content determination for the quality and all. There were many other works also, but I'm going to provide you a glimpse of the two works I carried out there. So moisture content determination in the peanuts and dried fruits. So development of new technology. So this is the lab wherein I worked. So again, before this, we saw the moisture content measurement in grains. So similarly, peanuts also, as I told you that in Georgia, peanuts is kind of staple food only, we can say that. It's there in everything. So it's very important to have a very accurate determination, because there, the people have allergies also of peanuts. So because of that, it's very important to have very accurate determination of moisture content in the peanuts, because it's required, as you've seen, the harvesting, storage, marketing, processing, everywhere. So the present methods which they are using right now are DC conductance based method, which is a destructive method, and the capacitance sensing. In the capacitance sensing, what happens is that whenever you have to find out the value of moisture content of peanuts, then you have to shell and clean the peanuts. So that's very cumbersome method. So Dr. Kandala, when he called me there for my research work, so he told me that if you are able to give me a low cost and fast, accurate method wherein I don't have to shell out the peanuts, then that would be really helpful for the farmers and the peanut processing industry there. So that is wherein I try to implement the impedance method on the peanuts also, but although in a slightly different way. So the conventional methods which are used there, they only provide an average for the sample and shelled peanuts, as I told you. So this is the disadvantage. So an instrument that could determine the moisture content of the individual kernels within the in-shell samples, it would be valuable both in the research and practical use in the peanut industry. So in this work, there were two methods which were mainly used. One was the dry oven method. The same method, normally wherever moisture content determination is used, the reference method is the dry oven method also only. The second one was the DDS and AD8302 based system, which is the proposed system. So again, I carried out the sample preparation, which took a few days. So I carried out preparation of the peanut samples from 7% to 16%. So we had to artificially firstly create the samples so that we know that what is the range of the moisture which we are working on. So 7 to 16%. And when we use the dry oven method, so dry oven method is quite the reference method. So the values are quite close. So these are the values which I got using the dry oven method. So although, as I told you, dry oven method is very accurate and used as a standard method, it suffers of being destructive, time consuming, very laborious. and it's a laboratory based method. Mainly it's a laboratory based method. So in this case, I use DDS and 8302. But here, DDS and 8302, which I used in my earlier for Indian wheat, was not used for impedance measurement. I used it for a slightly different way. You know what? I just thought that I came across this thing that whenever you are supplying a analog signal to any network, which is AC network, then it causes a shift in the amplitude, it causes a shift in the frequency, it causes a shift in the phase. So I just thought that in case I'm able to make use of the change, in case I'm able to calculate this shift and correlate it directly with the moisture content, will I get some values? I just thought like that. Like instead of, I don't use these values for the measurement of impedance as I used earlier by using ABB method and all those things. No, nothing. But in this case, I just thought that let me make use of two things, because I know that by using AD8302, I will be able to find out this amplitude shift. So what is this amplitude shift? This is nothing but MRPDD, magnitude ratio, and PDD is nothing but this phase shift. So both these things I was able to get from a single thing only, from AD8302 only, right? So I just, this was an experimental setup. As you can see from here, that this is the DDS. DDS is nothing but the AD9958, which was the source, the frequency source of for my sensor, and this is my capacity. This is my sensor wherein I put my grains, and one part of this source was given to this AD8302. So this is the phase shift and magnitude ratio detector. So one part of this was given to this, the second was given directly to my sensor, and from this I could know that what is the change in the magnitude as well as the change in the this thing in the ratio. So one you are giving directly. See, what is happening is that one is directly you're giving to the AD8302. So one is, that is the VS. The second is you give to my sensor. So after, because of the moisture content variation, when I'm pouring different samples, so there will be a phase shift. Every time I am getting the value here, there will be a change in that value. So this detects that change, and then through a DAC, it is then given to my PC. So in my PC, I have my values are constantly coming up. I get my Excel sheets, and those Excel sheets, then I can correlate the relationship. So that is how it all went about. So this is a block diagram of the system. It's a bit simpler as compared to what we did earlier. So in this case, we have one excitation source. This is a device under test, which is the sensor in this case. And this is a gain phase detector, that is AD8302, which calculates the magnitude of VS and VM and the change in the phase shift. So magnitude and phase, they get distorted after going through the device under test because of the difference in the moisture. And these are detected by the gain phase detector, which provides a measure of this distortion. And my work is to measure this distortion and correlate it with the moisture content. So again, DDS was used as a source. It is programmed using LabVIEW, and it can generate a frequency of 1 kilohertz to 1 megahertz. So LabVIEW is used to you have to give a sweep of frequencies from 1 kilohertz. So that was a limitation which the researchers were finding. They were not able to find out how you can give a sweep of frequency, and that also at a low cost, because all the devices which are used in the labs, they're very high cost, like LCR meter, impedance analyzer, they're in lakhs of rupees. But I use this DDS technology, which is a very low cost technique, but at the same time, it is giving me the same. It is giving me a sweep of frequency from 1 kilohertz to 1 megahertz. So, you know, that is where your research should work. You should think, okay, in lab, if this is one instrument, what alternative I can use so in order to get a low cost thing as well as the compact, because whenever you're working in the field, it is not possible for you every time to take one impedance analyzer or an LCR meter. That is only till at the research lab, till only when you're doing you're establishing your studies. But once you have established your study, you have to make a standalone device. You have to think of those things which are low cost as well as standalone. So for that, this DDS is very good alternative. This is the sample holder. This is the gain phase detector, which I already told you, and these are the values which I received after. This is the driven reference method, and this is my method. So as you can see from here, the values were quite close. Now coming to dried fruits. Dried fruits also, they are for them also, because the main problem in case of dry fruits is that you have to go towards the moisture determination at a very low level, low side. Like in this case, as you could see, we could go in grains, we could go up to 30%. In case of peanuts, you could go up to, as you can see, 15%, and so. But in case of dry fruits, we know that they have very low moisture content, and that is the main limitation or the challenge, I can say, in the conventional methods. So at present, these are the various methods which have got their own advantages and disadvantages. I'll not go into much details, but mainly for dry fruits, the method which is conventionally used is this Karl-Fischer titration method, which is a chemical method. And I also use this method only in my work. So there were two methods. Karl-Fischer method was the reference method, and AD8302 and DDS-based method was my method, which I tried to use for these dry fruits as well. Apart from the peanuts, dried fruits as well. So this is the titrator which was available there in their lab. So I prepared the samples again and use this chemical method for the determination of the. So by using Karl-Fischer method, and these are the various samples which I got. There were blueberries, cherries, cranberries, then dry cherries with glycerine, etc. All these dry pomegranates. So all the dry fruits were there. There were 8 varieties, and these were the normally like for every sample I had different samples, but mainly the moisture content was in this range only for all the samples. And this is a system which was used. DDS was used in this case. I used high frequency also. Like in this case, I went up to 15 megahertz. So there were intervals of 1 megahertz, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 15 megahertz, which I tried. So again, this I've already explained to you, and this was the sensor. In this case, we had one sensor wherein it was possible to use a single fruit also, as you can see from here. So there was a single, this is a cherry, and I could use a single sample also of the cherry here. This was another sensor which was available there. So there also I use this for cranberry. So again, same, this LabVIEW is used for programming this DDS, and DDS was used to give a sweep of frequency from 1 to 15, 1 megahertz, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz, 15 megahertz. One source of this was given directly to the sensor, and the other was given to the AD8302. From the sensor, the other was again given to this AD8302, which was able to find the ratio of the magnitude of this source as well as the measured. That is, what difference does it make after you apply this to the sample. This was then taken with the help of my DAC card. It was then given to my laptop. So these were the various values which I got at. So as you can see from here, I had various frequencies. So 1 megahertz V magnitude and V phase, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz. 15 megahertz values were not readable. Actually, what happened is that as we keep on going into high frequencies, at 1500 megahertz, the sensor was not giving us proper reading. So those values were just discarded, and we took values only for 1 megahertz, 5 megahertz, and 10 megahertz. So when we drew the graph using Unscrambler software, these were the correlations which we got. So I'll just directly show you the table of these. So from the table, we saw that rest of the frequencies, the magnitude was not paying, it was not giving much of, variation. Then the correlation was very low. However, at 1 megahertz, 0.699, this much of correlation existed. So that gave us some idea. Okay, so there is a hope that if we are able to find out the phase angle difference between the source and the sample, it can give us a good correlation between moisture content, and hence this can be used further to develop rapid, non-destructive and low-cost technology for reliable and accurate sensing of the moisture content in the foods. So this was all about the food quality. The time is very less because I have to cover another topic also. So I'll just quickly end this particular topic, wherein a new technology was proposed for moisture content determination in peanuts, dry fruits, as well as the Indian grains, as we saw earlier, using DDS and AD302. And the results were compared with the reference method, dry oven, Carl Fisher, and the results were quite good. So we'll come to the question and answer session later on. We'll keep last 15 minutes. Let me quickly give you another area of the application of the sensors, wherein we have biosensors, which are directly applied to our body, and how they can be used for further applications. So this is one of the research work of my students, wherein he made use of EMG signals for the control of a robotic arm. I'll quickly show you my presentation. So I made use of the feature extraction and classification. So ANN and all these things, they were used here, and classification of the EMG signals for the control of a robotic arm. So let's have an idea of what is a biosignal. A biosignal is a signal which is, let's say I'm taking some signal from my brain. I'm taking some signal from my skin. I'm taking some signal from my muscles. I'm taking some signal from the eyes. And those signals I am then further using for some applications. So that is how the term biosignal came into picture. Now, how does this signal get generated? You see, because it's a very complex, our body, a human body is very complex. If we talk of our nervous system, then whenever, suppose you have a change, you have a contraction or expansion of the muscles, then there is an electrical potential difference which is generated. Okay, so whenever there is a potential difference which is generated, then there is a change in the electric current, and that electric current then can be used, and these signals are known as bioelectrical signals. There are various bioelectrical signals. For example, EEG signals are the ones which we use from our brain. ECG signals are the ones which we use from our heart rate variability and all. We all know ECG is a very common term. And then we have EOG. EOG is another new technique which is used in case you take signals from the eyes, from your eyes, even from the movement of your eyes and these eye muscles. If you take these signals, they can also be used for the further applications. And then we have these EMG, but from our muscles contraction or expansion, there are some potential difference which is generated. So that is where these EMGs are used, and that is what I'm going to tell you today also. So EMG is a technique for evaluating and recording the activation signal of the muscles. So it is performed by an instrument which is known as the electromyograph. It detects the electrical potential. So as I told you that our muscles, these are nothing but muscle cells. So whenever, suppose I'm just moving my hand, so my muscles, they are getting contracted or they are getting relaxed. Okay, so whenever they are getting contracted or they are getting relaxed, an electrical potential signal is generated. You see how complex the things are, and we take our body taken for granted. But God has made us in such complex, you know the things. So when that electrical potential is generated, then this EMG electromyograph, it detects that electrical potential. So study of the EMG is called electromyography. So these signals are analog in nature, as you can see from here. So what we do is that by using the electromyograph, we collect the electric EMG signals over a specific period of time, as you can see from here. So they are generated in this form. They come in the form of some spikes. So we know that, suppose I was just contracting my arm, so I was just recording with the help of this electromyogram, then this signal was generated and so on. So at specific intervals of time, I'm getting those EMG signals. So these are all the values like muscle membranes, what is their potential. So these signals, they are of very low value. So you need to have amplifier in order to give it to some other application. So this is how the power spectrum it looks like. So this is a procedure. I'll not go into much detail. I mean, you just insert. This is the muscle, suppose, and these are the electrodes. Electrodes are nothing but the sensors, biosensors, which are used here. So these electrodes are biosignals. Okay, I'll come to that later on, but this is how the processing takes place. Firstly, the signal is taken, then it is the amplification is done, because as I told you that the signals are of very low magnitude, so we need to amplify. And there's a lot of noise also. A lot of noise in these biosignals, biosensors. They pick up a lot of noise, so you need to do the filtering also. And then these are converted from analog to the digital. All of them are analog in form, as we have just seen, so they are converted. And application of EMG signals are immense, like in rehabilitation, indicator for muscle activation, etc., etc., neurogenic or myogenic diseases. And in our case, I am making use of the application of EMG signal in robots. So there are various types of EMG electrodes. These are nothing but the sensors, the biosensors. These are of two types. One is, as you can see from here, the invasive. Invasive means you have to insert that into your skin, so in the form of needles. So as you can see, and the other are extramuscular surface electrodes, which were actually, these sensors were used in the present work. So you just apply some, apply them directly on the skin. You don't, they are non-invasive in nature. So this work was carried out in this form. Firstly, the EMG signals, they were acquired. We have a biopack in our department, that is the EMG machine. So it was used to acquire the EMG signals, different movements, mainly contraction and this thing expansion were done. So they were acquired. These EMG signals were acquired. After the EMG signals are acquired, I told you that there is a lot of signal processing which you have to do. You have to do the amplification, you have to do the signal processing, you have to do the feature extraction. The exact feature is to be extraction is done. For that, wavelet technique was used in the present work. And this is done in various domains, in the time domain, frequency domain, and time frequency domain, all were done. So they were studied in different domains for their suitability for the control of the robotic arm. So our main aim was to use these EMG signals and use them to control a robotic arm, and to develop an algorithm for the classification. So there are two things. Firstly, you have to extract the features, you have to extract the relevant information, and then you have to use a classifier. So for feature extraction, wavelet transform was used, and for classification, SVM technique was used. So I've already told you that firstly the acquisition of the EMG signal was done by using the EMG sensors, and then selection of appropriate feature means feature extraction was done, and then denoising was done. Classifier, selection of suitable classifier. We have various classifiers, so different classifiers were used, for the study, and the best one was selected for improving the accuracy. And when the signals were finally acquired, they were used to control the robotic arm. And actually, robotic arm was controlled. I will show you the video at the end of this lecture. And this was the methodology which was used. This is the subject. In the medical terminology, they call them a subject. EMG signal by use of biosensors. EMG sensor were used. Feature extraction using wavelet was done. And then this was given to STM classify, and finally to a microcontroller. We used Arduino microcontroller as an interface between the robotic arm. So all these signals, these were given to the Arduino, and Arduino was then used to control the robotic arm. So this is the data acquisition system, as you can see here. So these are the sensors. These are the biosensors. So these, as you can see, they are non-invasive in nature. So firstly, by using this EMG machine which we have with us in the laboratory, the signals are getting acquired. And once they are acquired, so they are then given, they are going to the PC, and there they have they are being processed. So these are surface electrodes or the biosensors. This is the Arduino board which was used in the present work. It is based on Atmega 328 microcontroller. And this was the robotic arm which was used, which was controlled, in fact, by acquiring those signals. This is the raw EMG signal. See, EMG device, it will just give you whatever signals are there, it will just give you that. Now, the main work of a researcher is to apply the right algorithm on this signal, because it contains a lot of noising, it contains lots of features. So you have to extract those features by using so MATLAB was used for the extraction of features. So various subjects or various different people, their signals were acquired and recorded. So you can see that this was the raw EMG signal for our person Akanksha Saxena, on whose raw EMG signal. So machine will give you the signal in this form. So after processing was done on it, after signal processing was done on it, so this was the signal which were processed. Then there were various features in time domain, frequency domain, and they were then extracted by using wavelet transform. This is another area of research because that is not in this the domain of this STC. So I'm not going into much detail of this. So this is covered wherein you have this DSP, digital signal processing and all. But we are mainly concerned on how the application of the sensor can be used. So we are mainly concentrating on application of the biosensor. So I'll just skip all these technical details of the DSP here. I'll mainly show you the video wherein you will see that how these signals, so this is a complete hardware setup, as you can see. So from the EMG signal, the data was given to here, and through this data it was given to the Arduino board, as you can see, and this was used then to control this robotic arm. Now let me just show you this video. You will see how signals which have been acquired, and this is the signal, final signals which were acquired for flexion and extension. In medical term, we call it flexion and extension. So I'll just show you this video quickly. See, this is the signal controlled out, which is then given to this Arduino. And through this Arduino, this is the robotic arm which is getting controlled. So this was one application of the biosensors which can be used. There are various applications which can be used. So this is one application wherein you can control a robotic arm. So suppose there is a patient who has lost his arm. So this below the elbow, he has lost his arm. So what can be done is that these EMG signals, they can be taken from there. So because he can't actually use the flexion and extension. So from those signals, then it can be used. Suppose he wants to pick up a glass. So but the signals are still there above the elbow. So there can be a robotic arm. So it can just pick up that thing. So various other applications in the medical terminology it can be done, or for using the robotic surgeries also. The doctors, they can't actually go there, but they can just change the muscle contraction and all those things. I mean, this is one application wherein your biosensors, they are used for the control of robots. So application of biosensors in robotics. So in today's session, we have covered mainly two areas. One is the application of the sensors in the area of food. Wherein we have seen that one of the area of food is food qualities, determination of moisture content. So wherein you took the sensors and you could find out the correlation between them and the moisture content in Indian wheat, in fruits, in peanuts. And the second application of the sensors which we saw in this session was the application in robots. So now we can come to the question answer sessions and question answers in case you have any. Dr. Ashok, can we have some question answer session, please?
Yeah, I'm just looking to the questions. Yeah, you already have some questions. I can see here. So Manisha Saran is asking, ma'am, how can we calculate the bulk density?
See, in this case, you don't have to take into account the bulk density because the impedance itself takes into account the bulk density. So you don't have to calculate the bulk density in this case. That is the advantage of using impedance over the capacitance. Because I didn't show you those equations. Let me just see in case I have them. Because the time was less and I had to cover two topics, so I just skipped a lot of technicalities which were there in order to just tell you about how actually it is used. But the equation which I came into, I arrived after I did this thing. Let me just see if I have it. Okay, let me just share the screen with you. You see, before I actually carried out this work, there was another. There were earlier some studies also which were carried out, which I did, as I told you, using precision LCR meter and impedance analyzer, in which I made use of the those high-end instruments for the measurement. So there I saw that there was a correlation between the impedance and other properties. you see, when we drew these graphs and all, na, so that is how I came. So in my lecture, I just directly told you that the impedance takes into account all those variations which the capacitance doesn't take into account. So whenever you are doing the impedance measurement, automatically there is a correlation between the bulk density also. So it takes into account all these variations. So there were a lot of studies which were earlier carried out based on that. So you don't have to calculate the this thing. You don't have to actually calculate the bulk density, but the impedance measurement itself takes into account because it has got a correlation with that.
Yeah. So I think Manisha, Madam has given the answer for your questions. So let's move to the another question, and this question is from Risha Trivedi, and she's asking how your research work is beneficial to the farmers in India to preserve grains or fruits.
This is a very good question because that's what I'm also asked, that we have done the research work, but how this will be beneficial to the farmers. So we've already we are already in the process of technology transfer of this technology to one of the industry in Ambala. And as I told you that all the moisture meters which are available in the market today, they are very costly, around 50 to 60,000, 2 lakhs of the rupees. But the one which I have developed is maximum costing around 5,000 rupees. So, you know, at present, you have poor farmers also, and for the government, it is mandatory that whatever, whether it is a grain, whether it is a rice or any other commodity, firstly, it has to be in this particular range of moisture only then it will be accepted, otherwise it will be thrown off. So poor farmers, they can't buy high and these moisture measurement meters. So our endeavor is to provide them with low cost moisture meters. So the technology transfer has already been done, and very soon it will come in the market.
Yeah, Richa, I think Madam rightly provided the answer to your question, but Dr. Ritula, I have a question with the same question.
Yes,
Normally we always talk about the cost reduction. So when we talk about the cost reduction, we even compromise the quality. So if we see the other countries like Germany or Japan, they talk about the quality and then they talk about the cost reduction. So means what is the problem with this? Means when we will come over this problem, because India we always talk, we have the finance problem, all the problems, because many times we compromise with the quality. So what is your advice or suggestion, please?
Definitely, sir. Quality, it cannot be compromised in this case because, as I told you, moisture content, we may not think, but actually it plays a very important role, and even slight variation in the actual value may lead to the spoilage of the whole grain. So quality, accuracy was of utmost importance to us before going for the low costing. So as I have shown you the results also, we got very high correlation values, around 97%, 99% accuracy was there. So that is where, in this case, we cannot compromise with the quality. I mean, you have to have accurate. So accuracy was very important term. That is what I am saying, that the present, in my presentation also, I showed that the present meters, one of the biggest problem is that they don't take into account the bulk density variations. They don't take into account the temperature variations, which give us error. The values which they are giving might have lot of errors. So suppose the moisture is 12%, and it has to be in that particular range only, it can show, okay, it is having 10%, which is not accurate, and a wrong value of the reading, it can, I mean, they just say, okay, your value is not fine, your whole lot is not accepted. So this was once happened also, I think in the state of Punjab. I mean, quintals and quintals of rice, they were just thrown away because of the wrong reading of moisture content, moisture measurement by the personals who were present there. So we cannot compromise with the quality, sir.
Yeah, thank you, madam, for very good answer. And then we have the next question from the name is not coming there, but the position is coming, Dean Student Affairs from some university. So this question is about the rice, and she's currently, I think he or she is this currently having this project to grade the rice.
Mhm.
And so this is like question: can you suggest us which sensor will be suitable for this purpose, and what kind of methodology we should adopt?
Grading rice, yes, this is another area. Although I haven't worked on grading, because when we talk about the food, there are a lot of things. One is the food quality analysis. I worked on determination of mycotoxins, determinations of toxins, etc. That is another area. But grading of the rice is also one very good area. I can tell you. I can tell you the place wherein you can consult. A few years back in CSIO, Central Scientific Instrument Organization, they had done a project on grading of the rice, because once I visited there, so they were just showing me. So they made use of the virtual instrumentation for the grading of the rice. But exactly what sensors and all, I think a person who's actually working on that can tell you. You can contact Dr. H.K. Sardana. He has worked on grading of the rice based on capturing of images, and once you capture the image, then they used some image processing technique on that, and then they graded the rice. So I think you can contact them for this work. Dr. H.K. Sardana in CSIU, Chandigarh. You can find out his contact details in the website.
Yeah, I hope that you find the participant I'm talking, that even the reference for which you can further proceed. So that's very good information. And the next question is from Rahat. I think you already answered. I'm still reading this. I hope you already answered this. Can we know the cost?
Yes, sir. It is around 5,000.
Yeah. So next question is from Dr. P.V. Rajeshwari. What type of biosensor are useful in robotics?
Dr. Rajeshwari, as I told you, it depends upon your application. For example, in this particular case, we were making use of EMG. So EMG, we had different biosensors. One were invasive, in which you have to insert the needle in the patient, whereas we made use of non-invasive biosensors. So it depends upon the application. Normally, when we are talking of the EMG, then non-invasive are more suitable. They don't cause much inconvenience to the patient, as well as they are more efficient. So it depends upon application area.
Yeah, we are moving to the next question, and this is from Silpa. So our question is how these robotic arms are powered.
Robotic arms they've got, for example, how you plug your laptop. So robotic arms, they also are plugged.
Okay, I hope this Silpa, you got the answer for your question. Then next question again we have about the COVID problem from Sanjeev Gupta. So madam, can you comment on sensor technology for this COVID problem? Yeah.
Sensor technology for COVID problem. This is a good research area, I would say, that work on this. I didn't have any chance of working on sensor technology for COVID, but yeah, in case you're working along with the medical fraternity, you can work on that. But I think I cannot comment on this because I haven't worked on this.
Yeah.
COVID is a problem which the whole world is facing right now.
Okay, so we are moving to the other question from Rahat Ullah Khan, and his question is: what is the immediate challenge or problems to solve in the view of farmers, stores to electrical engineers?
Good question, that is. You see, back in the year 2010, when I started my work, and I was just, presenting my synopsis. So, I mean, this is only a glimpse of a work which I showed you today. There was a lot of other work also which I did in the field of agriculture. So one of the panelists, he was sitting there and he asked me, "Madam, why do you want to go into agriculture? You are an electrical engineer. Why are you going into their area?" But now, after 10 years, we know it's a multidisciplinary area. And being an electrical engineer, we can contribute a lot. For example, in today's session, I showed you that how we can make use of electrical properties to determine the grains. Then there are other areas also wherein I worked on how to use the electrical properties for the quality analysis of the grains. Then there is for example, in US only I worked on total oil content determination of the peanuts. As I told you that they have the peanut is a kind of their staple food. So it's not only the moisture content, there are various other areas or problems which you can help them. Total oil content, you must be knowing that whenever we purchase some oil, they have written that what is the amount of that thing, I'm forgetting the term, which is used for good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, So at present, all those things, especially for peanuts, at present or at that time, the technology which was used was very cumbersome. It was laboratory-based method. They used to send their samples to the lab, and then by using chemical methods, they used to find out what was the term? I can't recall it. There were 3 terms, so they were for good cholesterol, So if a particular oil has got oleic acid, linoleic acid, and there was one palmic acid. So based on the quantity of this, so this is another area wherein I worked on. Then I've also worked on the food safety. For example, recently I submitted a project to DST on the detection of the mycotoxins in rice. So we know that with the high amount of mycotoxins, the mold growth. So a lot of people, they fall ill. So if we are able to detect the mycotoxins, or there are various other food quality attributes also. What is the amount of carbohydrate? What is the amount of protein in food? You are able to determine using the electrical properties. That will be really beneficial for the farmers. So there can be various areas.
Yeah, so Dr. Ritula, we have a lot of appreciation for you. The participant, I think, one more question I will read before that. I just want to say that in between the questions, we have the very much appreciation, like informative talk, wonderful session, nice session. So, yeah, so I cannot read all, but there are a lot of appreciation. So, and then I think we have one more question. This is Venkata
Ratnam. Venkatata Ratnam Kesam ji. Yeah, he's asking to give comments on soil quality sensors. I think Dr. Baban is covering that topic, no, sir, tomorrow?
Soil quality sensor, yes.
Huh? So tomorrow you have a session by Dr. Baban Kumar. He's a principal scientist in CSIU. He happens to be my husband. He is working in this area. So I think if in case you are interested in knowing about soil quality sensors for determination of micro and macronutrients, you will get a lot of answers there. He's working mainly in soil, air, and water. I don't know which area he's going to cover tomorrow in his session, but in case you are interested in knowing about the sensors for soil quality, then you can ask this question from here. He's a better expert who can comment on this.
I don't see any more questions. If you have any question, you can. We have still 2 minutes, so you can still ask.
And in case the participants are interested in pursuing their PhD in these areas, we work on varied areas in electrical engineering department. One is the food quality is one area. We also work on smart grid. So you people are most welcome. And thank you to all of you for being such patient listeners. Very patiently, I don't know how these 1.5 hours I've been keeping on speaking, but all of you have been so patiently listening. Mail ID of Madam Mail ID. Okay. So they are asking my mail ID. Should I type it in the chat box?
You can type, yeah.
Okay. I'm typing my mail ID, so you can contact me on that. Ritula@nitterchd.ac.in.